I would like to give a heartfelt thank you to the special friends of the channel for your generous donations. They are really helping the channel to grow. If you would like to help, the link is below in the description. Also, I'd like to thank each and every one of my subscribers for your continued support. It really means the world to me. Thank you. Ryan's Spicy Mates. As I sit on the couch watching the news, heavy-eyed about to doze off, I hear the dramatic music. I open my eyes and see breaking news flash across the ticker. Looks like it's a double murder. Another young couple was found slaughtered, hollowed out if you will. That's 4 murdered this week, 20 murdered this month, and God only knows how many over the past year. Part of me is sad to see another young couple slain by our town's serial killer, but the other part of me is glad for another order of meat for the restaurant. You see, I am the proprietor of Ryan's Spicy Meats, barbecue, and other lavish meat assortments, and I know who the serial killer is. The strange gentleman works for me in my restaurant and keeps it supplied with cuts of meat from his victims on a weekly basis. I met the man a little over a year ago when he came in and applied for the job. He was odd, to say the least, and seemed not to have possession of all his faculties. But nonetheless, times were tough, and I needed help in the restaurant and hired him on the spot. He was a pretty hard worker, no complaints in that department. I put him on the cashier and he was fine, but after a few weeks I received complaints from customers and a few of his fellow co-workers about his strange, odious scent that wafted from his body, and to tell you the truth, I noticed it too. He smelled like 2 dead beavers trapped inside an old fur trapper's anus. So after work one day, it was just him and me, closing up the restaurant, and after he clocked out, I stopped him and told him about the complaints. Then I informed him I was transferring him to the back of the house, where his new duties would be janitorial arts. He asked why, and once again I told him of the odious complaints, and proceeded to tell him I couldn't have an employee with such bad hygiene up front. He went on and on about not having bad hygiene, but I had to point out to him that he did, and every time he turned around or bent over, people could see his swamp ass. I became quite insistent that he had the swampiest of asses, as a matter of fact, because one could see the moist circle on the back of his pants. Well, let's just say he didn't take too kindly to these comments and me moving him to the back. Out of nowhere, he proceeded to pull out a knife and lunged at me. I tripped over a bucket and fell on my ass. I remember a TV being on above me on the counter, and it was the news, and they were talking about the first of the serial killings. He then laughed, pointed at the TV, and said that he did that, and there would be more to come. Well, I thought I was going to be the next victim, but thankfully, he listened to what I had to say and spared me. I thought something sly up quick, and told him that his secret was safe with me, and he could even carry out his killings in the restaurant. I threw in a little something beneficial for me and the restaurant by telling him to carve them up and store the meat in the freezer. With meat prices being the way they are today, I figured this was a perfect opportunity for me. I even said he could keep his job up front, despite the swamp ass. Well, he agreed, and here we are. He's continuing his killings. The restaurant is booming, about to open new franchises all over the country, all supplied by his mates and successful murderous pursuits. So stop on by Ryan's Spicy Mates. Try Jack's Racco Ribs or Agatha's Brisket Sandwich, and bring the kitties, why don't ya? But be careful, because if you're ever confronted by a smelly man with a Ryan's employee shirt on, your name might be added to the menu. Next. Buying a haunted house. The real estate agent made it a point to tell me that a man had been murdered in the house. That's why it was selling for a bargain price. I assured her that it didn't bother me. People around the neighborhood warned me that it was haunted. I didn't believe them. Pretty soon after moving in, strange things began to happen around the house. Lights would be on, even though I swore that I turned them off. Curtains would sway back and forth. The sound of footsteps would fill the hallway at night. I didn't think much of it at first. The brain has a way of playing little tricks on your senses, especially when you live alone. It didn't take long to up the ante, though. I came home from work one day to find the house in a total wreck. Furniture had been tipped over, clothes were thrown everywhere. The ceiling fan had even crashed onto the floor. Nothing was stolen, and the police found no sign of forced entry. Blood started trickling down the walls, and there was a constant stench of death. I had a priest bless the place, even though I'm not Catholic, but it didn't help at all. Then one night, while trying to sleep, I heard screaming. I jumped out of bed and began looking for the source of the awful noise. Searching all over the house, I finally ended up in the bathroom, and I realized the screams were coming from inside the mirror. "Enough!" I cried out. "Who are you, and what do you want?" "Don't you recognize me?" the mirror seemed to say. "The reason you got the house so cheaply." My reflection suddenly warped and shifted until it wasn't me anymore. I gasped, because I did indeed recognize the face staring back at me. It was the previous owner of the house. It was the man I killed. "You owe another great debt," the figure croaked, reaching through the mirror and grabbing me by the throat. "And I'm going to collect it." Twins. Kiersey and I were born identical. From birth, people confused us. We dressed alike, styled our hair the same. We even had that twin stereotype, secret language. When puberty hit and we got to high school, we simply fell out of sync. We were still identical, of course. It's just that Kiersey wanted to try, and I just didn't. I wasn't depressed. I wasn't even unhappy. It's just that she was so happy. It showed. It reflected in everything. She knew everyone and was genuinely friends with them. She dressed well, took detailed care of her waist-length hair, had a skincare routine that kept her looking like a freshly picked peach. She had a boyfriend. We had the same face. I had no trouble getting boys to look at me, but they didn't look at me the way Adam looked at her. In saying all this, I can recognize how jealous I may sound, but rest assured that simply isn't the case. I looked up to Kiersey as we grew up. I cut my hair short and dressed casually for ease because I was lazy, but I admired her ability to do it all and make it look so effortless. I wasn't even jealous of her relationship. I was happy to know someone looked at her like I did, like the sun shone from her very pores. Admiration simply wasn't enough. I wanted to do more for myself, instead of just watching it happen. Kiersey was so happy when I asked for her help. She, too, wanted us to be true twins again, to confuse people who didn't know us, to be each other's mirror. She took me to the store immediately, and we got started. I learned her skincare routine, and we did it together every night, laughing about the day's events over the double bathroom sink. I let my hair grow out, and she got hers cut a bit shorter. In almost no time, we were back where we were as kids, identical in every way, walking arm in arm. The accident was devastating. Brake failure. Her car wrapped around a tree. You don't truly understand mortality until you see your own face in a casket. The funeral home did the best they could, but you could tell where they had to reconstruct our face, where it had smashed into the steering wheel, where the tree had bashed our skull in. What was harder was seeing my name on the tombstone in the obituaries. My accomplishments listed and celebrated as something of the past. I almost regretted switching our license, asking her to take my car for the night. But as I look up into Adam's eyes, bury myself in his warm chest, as he tells me how sorry he is, it's completely worth it. Heartless. There's an old legend in my village. It goes back a long ways, to the time of witch hunts and that sort of thing. The story is about a woman named Ann Dyer and her gruesome fate, one that differs slightly depending on who's telling the tale. For the most part, it usually begins the same. John Dyer married her when she was young and didn't treat her so well. She was often said to have bruises on her when they were seen together around town. Well, one day Anne decided that she had had enough of John and his fists, so she did the only thing she could to defend herself and poisoned him. A week or so later, the neighbors discovered John, but Anne was nowhere to be found. As this was before a time of science, the wild stories about how she had killed him using black magic began to circulate, and a reward was placed on her head. Well, after a few months, she was spotted in a village north of her old one, going under a new name and living a quiet life. Once the news of who she was hit the village, they went to where she was staying with torches and blades and pulled the poor woman out of her home, screaming and begging for mercy. But she would receive none. She did not get a trial, no matter how she called for reason. Her pleas fell on deaf ears. Poor Ann Dyer was tied to the trunk of a tree, her wrists and ankles bound so tightly that witnesses said they bled. And there the villagers took turns throwing stones at her. During this horrible bludgeoning, it said that she asked them the same question over and over. How can you be so heartless? It didn't take long before Anne was dead, and her body was taken down from the tree to be burned. A tragic and awful fate for a woman who simply wished to be free. And then it happened. Inexplicably, one by one, her tormentors were found dead, their hearts cut out of their bodies, their faces twisted in unimaginable pain and terror. It wasn't long before every single member of the mob who had taken her on that black day had perished. But why am I telling you all of this? Well, there's one last part to add to the legend. I'll admit, until yesterday, I never really believed any of it. But in my desperation, I was willing to try anything. The tree was easy to find. It was the only one that wasn't twisted and dead in that dark patch of forest. So I went to it, and I asked for Anne's help. I said his name, and I left. I didn't expect much, to be honest. But the next morning, he was dead. His heart inexplicably torn from his chest. And finally, my mother and I were safe from his fists. I've always been a cat person. On the stage, 2 of the teachers were about to start their debate. The topic, cats versus dogs. Before launching into her opening argument, the science teacher cleared her throat. Cats poop, she began. Dogs eat poop. A ripple of laughter ran through the audience. Behind me, Tasha Andrews snorted. I didn't have to look at her to know that there was a sneer on her face. Dogs are obviously better, I heard her say. I turned around and faced her. Not for everyone. I prefer cats. No one cares what you think, loser, she shot back. Her gaggle of followers tittered around her. I looked back at the stage and tried to act like I didn't care. When I got home and collapsed on my bed, my cat Nix jumped up to join me. I'd heard that black cats don't get adopted as often because they bring bad luck, so I specifically looked for one when my parents took me to the shelter. I never regretted my choice. Nix was the sweetest, most affectionate cat I knew. Eventually, she leapt down and scratched at the door. I knew she didn't just want to leave the room. She wanted to go for a walk. Nix roams around like most outdoor cats, and I like to join her when I can. She trotted in front of me as we wandered through the neighborhood, enjoying the evening. Suddenly, I heard a familiar voice. On the other side of the road, Tasha Andrews was talking on her cell phone and walking my way. I ducked behind a nearby tree. Meowing, Nix dashed across the road and rubbed against Tasha. I watched Tasha stop to scratch Nix's head before continuing on her way, not noticing I was there. Nix ran back to my side, and we resumed our walk. At school the next day, everyone knew that Tasha had been hit by a car the night before and was in critical condition. I made some vaguely sympathetic noises when the news got passed to me. Later, I gave Nix an extra handful of her favorite treats. I'll always choose cats over dogs, no matter what. I want to be your only one. It's late, and the night has already stolen the sky. I lay in bed, and I feel the soft sheets against my skin. Looking at the home screen on my phone, my eyes are wide, but my brain is still. I'm coming to bed, my husband says, walking past to the master bath. I lay there quietly. Exhaustion from existing has already settled into my bones. I put my phone under my pillow and close my eyes. Honey, I hear my husband whisper to me. Honey, Come with me. I open my eyes and see him in the doorway of the bedroom. Where are we going? I ask. It doesn't matter. We'll just go. A spark ignites in my heart. I smile for the first time in a long time. As I throw the sheets off and move to the edge of the bed, I hear a flush from the bathroom. In confusion, I turn and look at the bathroom door. My husband walks out. My heart stops, and fear envelops my body. I can feel the knot in my chest and the dread in my soul as I turn back to the doorway of the room. The doppelganger of my husband smiles at me. The smile runs from ear to ear with malicious intent. It moves closer to me. With every step, its appearance becoming more and more distorted. Honey. Its shrill voice is cut off by sounds of choking. 4 long black spider legs slowly emerge from its mouth. I begin to weep. I turn to my real husband. He looks frozen in fear. I love you, I whisper to him as the end comes near. Death cometh. The glass in the picture frame just shattered. No one touched it. It shattered out of the blue. The area with my daughter's smiling face, along with my gorgeous redhead wife, remained intact. But I disappeared behind the spiderweb-like crack pattern. I found it hilarious, but as more signs appeared, the signs your body gives are easily missed. Loss of appetite, feeling tired, feeling miserable. Just regular days for me. Feeling cold all the time? It's still winter. Sure, I was feeling cold. Daddy, look, an owl. My daughter insisted on seeing an owl outside our bedroom. I never saw it, but kept hearing the fuckers hoo every night. Children of the neighborhood became increasingly afraid near me for no reason. They just had a suspicious look on their face whenever I was on the street playing with my daughter. It must be your big beard, my wife said, smiling under her beautiful blue eyes. Panic struck me when the antique standing clock stopped 3 nights in a row, exactly at 1:33 a.m. I read about all the bad omens of death, and whenever another one became true, my heart just sank. When the glassware slipped out of my shaking hand, when my skin was developing rashes, when the bread my mother-in-law baked was split across the top. One night, we were about to go to sleep, my wife calmly lotioning her hands in the bed, as usual, when a big black butterfly flew into our room. I cried myself to sleep, but woke up at 1:33 a.m. to 3 loud knocks on our front door. It was loud enough to wake me up, yet neither my daughter nor my wife seemed to notice it. The last straw was when I saw my doppelganger. Yeah, beards are common for mid-30s suburban males, but I swear he looked exactly like me. So I visited a fortune teller. I expected an old gypsy hag or someone like Abby from NCIS, but she looked more casual, like Amy Adams. After reading the cards, she commanded me to leave right now. At the door, she asked, "Do you have any children?" "A daughter." "Make sure she's nowhere near you today." I convinced my wife to let our daughter sleep at her grandma's tonight, but it turned into a huge fight. I was told to sleep on the couch in the living room. I couldn't care less. I was shaking, crying. It was the darkest night ever. I just sat on the couch, rocking back and forth. After 1 a.m., I'm sure I lost the last drops of my sanity. All I remember is dogs barking in the far distance. Then the sound became closer and louder. At the last minute, our neighbors' dogs were the ones barking like crazy. Then suddenly, silence. I was laying there in a fetal position, my eyes closed shut, fists clenched. I barely heard my wife's mumbling in our bedroom. "Who are you?" Followed by an unearthly scream. I'm really hungry. I'm hungry. Not just hungry, but starving. My stomach is growling. Pain rolls across my stomach in droves. Acid sloshes against the lining, making it bleed. I've just eaten dinner, too, which makes it even more puzzling. And I didn't just eat a simple takeaway. I feasted at an all-you-can-eat buffet. Yet barely 5 minutes later, I feel like I haven't eaten for days. I drive over to the nearest restaurant and order up a storm. Appetizers, entrees, desserts, pretty much everything on the menu. The waitress nods furiously and scribbles down my order. The wait is agonizing. My stomach feels like it's eating itself. When the food finally arrives, I don't even wait for the waitress to put it down on the table. I grab the food off the plate and shovel it into my mouth. Everything tastes delicious, but I'm still hungry. Luckily, there's street food all around me. Hot dogs, churros, popcorn. At first, I try playing nice and queuing up for food. But then hunger overtakes my etiquette, and I cut to the front of the line, much to the protest of the people behind. I'm so hungry, I even snatch food off people and gobble it up, much to their disgust and dismay. I eat and eat and eat until there are sauces smeared all over my mouth, and there are breadcrumbs in my beard. But I'm still hungry. Every day I eat, takeaways, groceries delivered to my home, street food. But soon I run out of money. My credit cards are all declined. I'm still hungry, though. I chance upon the old man one day, when the hunger is near unbearable, playing his harmonica. He gives me a sorrowful look, his eyes praying I have a few spare change to give him. He also is a delicious walking bag of flesh. He does not scream as I pounce, my hands reaching for his throat. Claws rip out of my nails and dig in deep, streaking blood on his skin. His eyes are wide, and he chokes on his blood. The light rushes out of his eyes at last. Victorious, I lean down and tear out his skin with my teeth, now sharp as knives. As I chew and swallow, licking my lips, my stomach lets out a sigh of relief. I'm full at last. New witch on the block. There was one rule in Little Root Village, where I come from. Don't talk to Becky. Ever. Why? For one thing, she looked nothing like the other women. Becky was short and dressed shabbily, even though there was a fine tailor in town. A scar ran down her left cheek, towards her chin. Cold green eyes stared out of a creased, wrinkled face. Secondly, she wasn't the friendly sort. Ever since she moved in, she had been scowling at everybody, man, woman, or child. Her green eyes boring into them, as if daring them to pick a fight with her. Needless to say, everybody was terrified of her. Lastly, there were rumors flying around. To be fair, as we never talked to Becky or found out exactly what she was like, all we could do was speculate. "Have you heard what Becky actually is?" said my friend Mildred during knitting club. "What?" I asked. "That her mom's a witch. Apparently she passed on her secrets and knowledge to her daughter. That's why she's so, weird." I laughed. "Come on, witches don't even exist. There's no way people would believe that." But people did believe it. For some reason, that particular rumor caught fire. That was the reason for the candy-colored smoke puffing out of her house, they said, because she was a witch. And soon, rumor became truth. Becky was not human. She was a filthy curse upon the world. A town meeting was held one night, and it was decided that it was best for the village and God's earth that she was eradicated from this world. And so they marched, man, woman, and child, towards Becky's house, their faces burning red in their fiery torches. Becky came out, I think, held her hands up in surrender, whispered words of prayer. Fear danced in her emerald green eyes. But the mob yelled and threw their torches toward her and her house, and as soon as the sparks touched the straw, it caught fire. Flames rolled across the roof and licked the walls. Some were bold enough to throw their torches at Becky herself, and she lit up, a human torch. Her screams penetrated the night. There was nothing left. Everybody swept up the ashes the next morning and considered it a job well done. Then people started waking up, weeks later, with 4 stomachs, and their hands melted into hooves. Some were bent over, barely speaking English. Others were covered in fur and sprouted horns. Husbands hollered and wives wailed, but everybody agreed that for some reason the humans turned animals were plump and juicy. Feasts and barbecues were held every night, and the food was delicious. Personally, I never harassed Becky, nor took part in the mob that ended her life, just steered clear like everybody else. However, this morning I woke up with my body unnaturally pink and furry, and my nose and mouth squashed into a snout. Worst of all, there were people staring through the window. Their eyes shone with hunger. Unknown number. Unknown number. Hello. Me. Hi, who is this? Is this Jacob? Don't try to prank me, man. I'm already fighting with Jess. Have your parents left yet? Dude, stop. Their car is gone. Lucky guess. 2012 silver Toyota Corolla. What the fuck? I'd walk to school every morning to save myself the embarrassment of having my parents drop me off, and I've never let anyone come over to my house. This is when I knew something was up. After receiving that last message, I searched the house and looked out each of the windows. Nobody was there. My parents won't be home until late, so there's nothing more I can do except forget that happened and get back to watching TV. I plop myself back onto the couch and press play on the remote. As I mindlessly watch Impractical Jokers, a bit of fear still lingers in my brain. I can't help but imagine that someone is out there watching me, observing my every move. 3 loud knocks on the front door make me jump into the air. Once I land, I'm frozen in my seat, imagining a serial killer with a carving knife waiting for me on the other side of the door. A minute goes by before I manage to pry myself off the seat and look outside. Nobody. Maybe there's a serial killer waiting to gut me like a fish. 3 even louder knocks happen on the back door. I'm screwed. My icy cold fear melts and I arm myself with my dad's pocket knife that he leaves out on the side table in the living room. I flip it open and walk cautiously towards the back door. 3 more loud bangs. I open the door. Whoa! The DoorDash driver says, staring at the knife I'm brandishing. I've just got your food, dude. I feel as if my heart just exploded. I snatched the brown paper bag out of his hands and slammed the door shut. After locking and bolting it, I breathe and head back towards the couch. I silently chuckle, realizing how stupid I was being. I take my seat once again and rip open my bag of food. I love burritos. I rewind the episode I am on and take a giant bite as I feel the vibration of my phone on the couch. Unknown number. Enjoy the food. Attached to the message was a video. It was taken in the back of a restaurant in a first-person POV. The man walked through the kitchen until he got to a walk-in freezer. He opened the door slowly, revealing my parents. A sign was attached to them, and I could only read it once the cameraman zoomed in on it. Tonight's special burrito de Padres. Thank you so much for joining me. Remember, you can find me on Instagram at duchess_of.darkness or duchessofdarkn2 on Twitter. Also, please send me your stories or poems to duchessofdarkness27@gmail.com. Until next time.